plan.
So over to you, Bernadette.
Awesome. Hello, everybody. Welcome. It's about 5 o'clock in Melbourne, Australia. I believe it's in the morning there. So thank you for coming on a Saturday morning to listen to this presentation. And as you can see, how to build a successful online business is the topic. And I know a little bit about this. And I do believe that the success leaves clues. You know, when you surround yourself and interview as many people as I have about online business, you start to see commonalities and you start to see patterns in how people have built their businesses. And this is the 5 books that I've either written myself, which are the first 2, and the final 3 are ghostwritten. And by ghostwriting, a lot of people don't know what that means, but it basically means I interview the business owners extensively over like a 9-month period. And then I tell their story and I extract and find, you know, the stories behind their success. And as I said, you know, you find the commonalities. And I think that's really interesting because when people ask me about the books that I've ghostwritten or edited, they say, what do you see in common? So I wanted to share with you what I've seen in common amongst all the people that I've interviewed. And as Yangama mentioned, the other element of what I do is I'm a judge. So I actually get to see a lot of award applications for business and for business books. And business books are often representative of a business as well. So, you know, I've seen a lot and I've been around a lot, as you can see by this visage, this, you know, I've seen a little bit. So these are the kinds of brands that of people I've interviewed. Some may not resonate in Africa, but like Freelancer, I'm pretty sure you would have heard of Canva, Uber, etc. So these are big brands.
These are big brands
in Australia. And I sat down with the owners and founders of these companies and asked them every question I could about how to build an online business. And the reason I was interested was because I have my own online business, which is the Australian School of Copywriting. And I teach people to become freelance copywriters. And copywriting is the art of writing words that sell. So brochures, blogs, website copy, TikTok scripts, video scripts, TV commercials. So anything to do with a written word is what a copywriter does to commercialize a product. And I was really interested. I thought, well, I've built my online business because it's online courses. And I thought, how do other people build their online businesses? And that's why I went out and I interviewed some very generous people who just literally said, yeah, come and interview me. And I learned, you know, about how to build an online business through interviewing all these people. And I developed a process because I do think people want a process. They don't just want insider tips or inside secrets. They actually want a blueprint. So I discovered there's a couple of things to consider. Firstly, it's mindset. You know, there's got to be a lot of belief and courage and conviction, confidence in what you have, even if you don't know it's going to be successful or not. The second thing was a minimum viable product, MVP, which is a fairly standard term in startup land, whereby we know that sometimes things are really expensive to build and they have got lots of features and it'll be really exciting one day. But until that's built, you need something to share with people. You know, you need a brochure, you need a slide deck, you need a prototype, you need an app or something just to get people to understand what you can do. So that's the MVP. And the third thing was momentum. In terms of the technical tools to build your online business, there's a lot of free tools out there, a lot of free platforms that you can use very cost effectively to build what you need. And the fourth thing was marketing. And that's kind of my background. I've got a background in advertising agencies. I've been working as a copywriter for 30 years. So I've seen a lot of marketing and both the analog, like the old days, and also the new. So I'm kind of old enough to be around and have one foot in either camp. And what I've discovered is you can have the best product in the world, but without good marketing, without good copy, without good content, it goes unnoticed. And that is the reality for a lot of what I call technicians, people who are very, very good at what they do. Like it might be you're an amazing nurse or a midwife, and you've developed an app, which is amazing and it's highly needed. And then nobody knows about it because there's no marketing. So you kind of need the marketing element really, really strongly behind you. And the last one is more about motivation, about how to pitch, persuade, and influence others to do business with you. And that's where partnerships and collaborations and storytelling, getting your story out. It might be speaking at an event, going on a webinar, on a podcast, doing meetings, networking. There's in those moments where you have the opportunity to influence another person. How do you do it? Okay, so there's my 5-step method. I won't have time to cover all of these, but I've just picked elements from here, little highlights, so that you can see, just get a glimpse of some of the experiences I've had with my online entrepreneurs and how they've done it, the commonalities. So here are my top 7 secrets for entrepreneurial success, and I'll go through each one in detail. So first, and they might seem a little bit odd or counterintuitive or a little bit, not what you expect, but I'll explain why I've listed them. So firstly, successful entrepreneurs, they enter awards. All right. They go out and they promote their business to the world, even if it's fledgling, even if it's small and just beginning, because often there are awards for that. And often the awards get given. And then once you've won one award, you tend to win a second award. Then you win a third award. And even I just noticed this today. I was reading the paper here in Australia, and there was a author's award. It was called the Age Book of the Year. And the man who won it 3 years ago. And then there was an art prize, and the woman who won it this year won it 4 years ago. It's like, what's going on, right? It seems to be awards get given to people who already have awards. Number 2, they trust their crazy ideas. You have to admit there's been some pretty crazy ideas of late. And you think, how did they ever catch hold? What was so special about that? And what was special was the owners of the idea really believed in it, and they foisted it upon the world, and then the rest is history. So you got to trust that what you have is valuable, because if you get pushed down or you give up at the first sight of resistance, it's not going to last. So you've got to have absolute deep foundational belief. Number 3, keep ahead of the trends. Like you might be here thinking you've got an idea and you know what you're going to do. And other people are thinking, I don't quite know what my business is yet. So I'm looking for something. I have a passion, I have energy. And I'm going to show you just a couple of tips on how you can spot a trend kind of before it's actually happened. Number 4 is I know what problem they solve. And this is a classic marketing phrase, which is you've got to know the problem that people have that your particular problem business solves. Number 5 is find a point of difference, okay, a sustainable, profitable point of difference. And that's not to say you have to be unique or completely no one's ever done it before. In fact, it's not even advisable to do something that nobody's ever seen before, because people don't understand it and they don't see the need necessarily. Whereas if it's already, the need is already there and you're just finding a different angle or a different, nuance, often people already understand it, so they can accept that this could be, worthwhile. You don't have to sell them on the whole concept. Number 6 is to create an MVP, which I just covered. So I'll give you some tips on how to actually do that. And number 7 is to take action. There are certain questions you can ask that are incredibly powerful for moving an idea from just being a concept or something you toss around with your friends into an actionable business. So let's get started, shall we? So first, enter awards. Okay, this is actually a really powerful technique for actually knowing how to structure a business, what metrics to look for, what metrics to measure, what are the goalposts that you should be aiming for. And the way to find out about how these businesses should be structured is to actually look at the award applications. So there might be, for example, Entrepreneur of the Year, or it might be Startup of the Year, or it might be GQ Business of the Year, whatever award you can think of, there will be an application form. So you go to the website, you download it, and you look at the actual questions, and you go, oh, so that's what they measure. That's how they determine what success is. And I found that very helpful when I was actually the judge, because I'm looking at these applications going, I would never have thought to think that was, an interesting metric that they would consider valuable. Not to mention, when you build your business, if you can build it with these award headings in mind, knowing that that's what they're going to look at, then it just gives you a little bit of an insight into what you need to focus on. Now, I'll give you an example. Booktopia is a bit like Amazon Books in Australia, or Book Depository. And I interviewed Tony Nash, who's the owner, who's a lovely man. And he enters lots of awards, and he's won lots of awards. But like I said, one award leads to another award generally. And I said, Tony, why do you do that? It's a very expensive exercise to enter awards. And he said, well, when you win a badge, you know, like an award badge, he said, it's not just an award. He said, it's a trust badge. And what it does to the reader or the investor or the consumer or whoever you're selling to, it makes them think, out of all the competitors, this one is endorsed. This one has credibility. And in online world, when we are making very quick decisions about who's valid, who's real, who's not, an award from a reputable organization can go a long way. And it has absolute financial benefits too, because Tony talked to me about, he did a split test. So with the website, they put one homepage which had no award badges on it. And then the other homepage, split test, like the B side, it had all the award badges on it. So they served up 50% to the people and found out what kind of results they got. And they served up the second page, the other 50%, to a different group. Or they served up that second page to the 50%, basically split test. I hope you know what that means. And they found that the page which had the trust badges on it outperformed the other one by 73%. So it's pretty dramatic increase. And when you're talking about a multi-million-dollar business, I think it translated into like $30 million extra in business over a period of time. So it's worth entering awards. Number two, they trust their crazy ideas. Okay, so this is where, if you have an idea, if you can just keep talking about it and keep talking to people and hearing what they say and listening to the questions they have of you. And the temptation is sometimes to just not take it in because you think it's being critical, or they're knocking it down, or they don't believe in it. And that all might be true. But if you can be open to just hearing those questions, what it's telling you is what you need to do next time when you pitch. Because if they say something like, I don't quite know who it's for, or I don't see the point of difference, or I don't even know what it does, that's telling you that your pitch needs to be amended. So just quick, these numbers are a little bit old, but the principles remain the same. These companies, like Valve, which is, they make Steam, video games, Google, clearly we know all those, Google's been around for a little while now, but the 2011 valuation for, say, Google or Valve was 1.5 billion or 150 billion. In 2014, significantly higher. But look at a few of these as we're coming up, like Uber had only been in business for 7 years in 2014. Again, these are old numbers, but the ratios remain the same. In 2011, it was 2 billion. By 2014, it was 17 billion. So the increase, is 8.5x or 8.5 times. Airbnb, it was worth 2 billion, and then it's 10 billion, 5 times. A GitHub, and then Waze, quirky as Snapchat. I mean, Snapchat had been in business for 3 years, and in 2014, it generated 10 billion. So you can see that, these companies are growing incredibly quickly, and more so than any legacy companies. Like you look at, I don't know, BHP in Australia. I don't know if you know BHP, but it's been around for like 100 years and it's not even worth this, right? But Snapchat's been around for 3 years and it's worth 10 billion. So what do all these companies have in common? Well, it's pretty clear. They're all exponentially, profitable, or exponentially growing, but they all have in common is software. And that's their commonality. And that's, so if you're thinking about building a business and you want it to go exponential, meaning like hockey stick, then think about the software aspect, the online aspect. And that's not to say you can't have a service, but maybe think about the way it gets presented or distributed or amplified being online. So you look at LinkedIn, Facebook, Insta, Canva, Afterpay, Atlassian. These are, well, the last 3 are Australian companies, but they're global companies now and billion-dollar companies. And what they have at the heart of them is software. So think software. If you're looking to go global and you're looking to go big and quickly and to really have an impact, then think about how you can turn it into a piece of software. keeping ahead of the trends. Okay, so you might be thinking you've already got something, but what you want to be sure of is that it's growing up in terms of its trajectory. You know, are people more likely to want this in the future, or are they more likely to not? So if you're going to invest in your own business, it's going to be, you know, 5 to 10 years minimum, really, before you could be in a position to do something significant in terms of exiting or making a massive impact. That's not necessarily always the case, but that seems to be, 10 years seems to be when companies begin and end and sell, if they're up for selling. So you want to pick an industry or category, and health obviously is a huge growth category. So if you're here for health reasons, I think you're absolutely on the right track. And I'll give you a really local example about trends, okay? And if you can keep on top of them, even small things can make a big difference. And this is not an online story, but this is my local neighborhood. And there's a train station just where that little red star is. And there was a beautician on the corner called Beauty on Rose, who I used to go to. And they do facials and waxing and all that kind of stuff. And the woman who runs it is really, she's active and she's progressive, and she's always on the lookout to keep things moving. Now, in Australia, we've got this thing called level crossings, which is railway stations. And they're going to remove where, cars go across it and the boom gates come down. And they're real problems, right? Because they hold up traffic. So the government decided years ago, we're going to dig under the road to create the crossing, so people don't have to wait at the level crossing anymore. So this was huge. There's like 60 level crossings around Victoria going to be upended. And all this traffic, as you can see, is going to just cause chaos for the businesses in the area. So most businesses along this strip just kind of forgot about that it was going to happen. They just kept trading. Cafes, yoga studios didn't do anything about it, even though they knew it was coming. The woman who ran Beauty and Rose thought, okay, this is an opportunity for me to actually get out of here, move to a different location where it's bigger, better parking, and less hassle. So she left and went to a new location. She is now flourishing. Her business is bigger than it ever was. So she saw this kind of negative about, my business is going to be boarded up. There's not going to be any foot traffic for years. I need to do something. So she saw ahead of the curve and she made a decision to go bigger and better elsewhere. The other businesses who didn't spot those trends, they couldn't see into the distance, they couldn't be bothered or didn't know how to, stayed. And this is what they were faced with every morning. And no one came to their businesses and they all went out of business. Okay, so you've got to look ahead to see what's happening either in your area or your category or your industry. And a way to think about trends is to think about the pendulum. So if you think about the pendulum, and when it swings one way, it leaves an absence in its wake. Okay, so everything's moving towards here. It could be, I don't know, whatever the topic, I'll show you some examples in a second, but it goes over here and everyone goes with it and they all pile in, right? Let's say TikTok. So everyone's piling in to make TikTok videos. Meanwhile, there's an absence, okay, of something that's been left. And what I'm suggesting you do, or anyone who's interested in trends, is to think about what's the absence here? What isn't being addressed? What business is being created or what problem is being created by the absence? And maybe that's where we should go. So, for example, if you think about noise and digital noise in particular, like the social media, the content, the overwhelm we all experience with music and podcasts and noise, just everything, emails coming at us all the time. It's very difficult to disconnect from the computer. And so that's the pendulum. Like it's swung in terms of we're on all the time. Very difficult to disconnect. So if that was leaving something in its wake, what would it be? And is there a business opportunity in that? And I suggest, yes, there is. It's the need to have mindfulness because everyone is so overwhelmed with noise. They're going, I need to disconnect. I need to have my own time. I need to find introspection from within. I need to actively seek it. It just doesn't happen now unless you seek it. And so you look at the explosion in mindfulness, the apps and the yoga retreats and, the apparel and the podcasts and the the retreats that you can go on where, you can actually just pay money to sit down and be quiet, right? So it's kind of ironic. So it's kind of left a gap. So in your business, think about what everyone's rushing to and think about what does that leave in its absence, and is there an opportunity there? So even though it might not be immediately apparent or obvious, it's those people who can go, you know what, no one's doing this, but I reckon this is where it's headed. They're the people who go in early and they can clean up. So a way to find this, I'm certain you know of these particular tools, but Google Trends is a wonderful way just to work out what's trending. You can just find out what people are looking for. It might be looking at the kinds of words people use. Like, I teach meditation, and I was curious as to whether meditation was a stronger word for marketing purposes, or whether it was mindfulness. And on this occasion, just in terms of India, it was just interesting to see what was going on in India. The word meditation is absolutely outperforming the word mindfulness. So if I was looking to run workshops or market to India, I would I would definitely use the word meditation, because mindfulness doesn't have any resonance. So these things can tell you that if you're tossing up between certain ideas or words, this will tell you what people are looking for. And of course, if you already have a website, then you should be hooking it up to Google Analytics and Search Console. And they are like mind-blowingly powerful tools that will tell you from your own website's perspective, who's coming, what words are they using to find you, where are they coming from? Are they coming from mobile or desktop? And they can tell you how fast your site is operating, whether there's any broken pages, whether people are accessing every single page. So it's a free tool, right? And it's really powerful to know what's actually going on with your website. I'll give you a quick story. I built a new website. I've had a website for 15 years, but about 4 or 5 months ago, I rebuilt it, and we launched it. And I said to my web developer, just make sure it's indexed for Google, blah, blah, blah. Of course it is. Of course it's really basic. And after about a month, I'm thinking, what's going on? Like, sales are down, and I don't understand why, because nothing's changed. And so I had an expert do this over my website, and he said, oh, were you aware it wasn't even indexed for Google? Like, Google didn't even know it was around. And I've been around for 15 years. It was like, are you kidding me? And what had happened was the web developer didn't check a box. It was as simple as that. Now, if I hadn't asked the question, if I hadn't engaged an expert to look at it, I would never have known that for myself. So, and he uses these tools. Okay, so you could be having problems without actually knowing you're having problems, because I knew there was something, but I didn't know what it was. I can absolutely recommend you to think niche. Like, I am going to presume you've got a global product, all right, or even an African product, which is a big enough market to sustain a lot of things. Australia's quite small. We struggle in Australia because it's so small in terms of population. America considers us to be a niche, all right? So we have to go global if we're going to go big in Australia, whereas you might already have Africa as a global destination, which is big enough to sustain your business. But let me give you an example. Like, take animals, right? They are, I don't know how it is in Africa, but in Australia, people treat their animals like children. Dogs, cats, etc., have been elevated as substitute children. And they used, in my day, like when I was a kid, dogs, and we had cats, but they were just kind of there to look at, pat a little bit, but they weren't part of the family. We certainly didn't spend a lot of money on them. And now, and I'm sure you've seen this, but people treat their dogs like substitute children. So there's, clothing and collars and treats and travel and hotels and, pampering. Yeah, it's a big business. And so smart organizations are really looking at how can we extend the market in animals into a niche. And so, for example, they're now looking at, dog medicine, dog naturopathy, dog vitamins and things like that, dog therapy for dogs with depression. So all the diseases that we have as humans, we're now thinking, well, do our dogs have that? Maybe we can provide a product for pet owners who are a little bit, dedicated and build a business out of this. So, smart vets would be targeting dogs for diabetes and all sorts of other diseases that in the past they might have just ignored. Animal acupuncture, I mean, who would have thought? But nonetheless, that's what's happening. And even dog hotels, like the image you see on the right, this is a real place where you take your dog and it rivals, a 3-star hotel. And people are spending big bucks on this kind of stuff. So if you've got a business, right, I'm not saying your health app needs to target animals necessarily, even though that could be a very lucrative market for you. But is there a niche within your sector that could very much need what you have? And you start with them, right? Because if you think about marketing something and you think, oh, it's everybody who's got a disease, for example, but it's really hard to do. So just focus on a small group of people. When I say small, I mean like it's got to be marketable and sufficient to generate a profit, but you got to know where to find them, right? So if you can find a small group of people who have the same problem, it's going to be easier. So think about what trends will impact you. What are the threats coming, the opportunities? Like in Australia, we have a massively aging population, and therefore aged care residencies and retirement homes and scooters and wheelchairs and nurses. And you just think that alone, the market it creates because of an aging population. Things like a lot of people are giving up health insurance because it's so expensive in Australia. That's causing problems because they're now going to the emergency departments to get assistance when traditionally that was for urgent situations. And now they're going because, they've got a cold. So these are all threats to the health system. But within that, there's always an opportunity, okay? So what new niche could you service? What new services or products could you create to cater for your market? Know what problem they solve. This is a fairly standard marketing question, but a lot of people forget this when they think about a product going to market. They don't actually think who will need this. And just a quick example, it's nothing to do with health or online, but in Adelaide, where I grew up, I go and visit family fairly frequently. It's in South Australia. It's about 1,000 kilometres from here. And there's a coffee shop on the corner of this particular street. And every time I go back, the coffee shop has gone out of business. It's gone like for lease. It's like, okay, that's sad. I always feel sad when businesses go out of business. And sure enough, a month later, what takes its place? A coffee shop. And then 3 months later, for lease. And I'm always amazed at how frequently these empty spaces get replaced with the same business that was there. And I'm saying to my mother who lives there, I say, Mum, they're out of business again. When will these people realize that's not a good spot for a coffee shop? There's something about that location that people don't want, or the coffee shop that goes in there is not doing something that the audience want. So, just because you've got something doesn't mean people want it. And you have to look at what other people are doing and see if they're succeeding as well. And I remember interviewing a man for my first book, Secrets of Online Entrepreneurs, and he was right on the pulse of online business. He knew everybody. And I said, Paul, what's the next big thing? What are you getting into? And he goes, well, that's probably not the right question to ask. The question you want to be asking is, what problem is yet to be solved? So in your life, and maybe in the worlds of your family, if you hear people say, wouldn't it be great if, that is kind of an indication that that problem has not been solved. And so really be on the lookout for when people are saying, giving you indications that there's an issue that they haven't actually resolved yet. And I'll do a bit of a deep dive into that in a second. But one of the things I've heard over the years when I've been speaking is people say, oh, all the good ideas are gone. The Facebooks are gone and the TikToks and the Snapchats and the Instagram and the Ubers and the DoorDash and whatever. And it's like, yeah, those big platform ideas have been taken, but that doesn't mean you can't come in at another level and create a solution for some of the problems that big platform's creating. Like you look at the amount of problems Facebook's caused, you know, in terms of fake data, fake news, bullying, you know, weaponizing of data, data scraping, data manipulation, you know, so that's caused an opportunity for a whole bunch of businesses to solve that. You think about Uber, right? Yeah, it owns the platform. It's dominating in the area. But in Australia, what's happened is there's been all these kind of niches who've popped up to service the market that Uber can't service. So, for example, a lot of women catching Ubers home at night don't want to have a normal Uber. They want to have a female driver of the Uber, or they want their children to be picked up from basketball practice from a female driver, with the perception being the female is safer. And so there's now an opportunity for female drivers to start their own driving business, okay? So that's caused by a problem Uber created. Think Airbnb, okay? They own the platform, absolutely, they own the sector, but within that, there's been a whole bunch of businesses that have cropped up because of problems or, you know, opportunities that Airbnb have created. So for example, if you own a property, an Airbnb property, you may not have time to rent it and maintain it and tidy it up and change the sheets and, you know, do the cleaning. So you hire a rental manager to do it for you. So that's a whole brand new service or industry, if you like, for real estate agents and other people in that sector that didn't exist before Airbnb came along. There's a thing called a smart lock. Okay, so the problem that Airbnb created was when you have a property and you have a tenant and they leave after 2 days, they've got to get the keys back. They might steal the keys, they might ruin the keys, you know, they might copy the keys or whatever. So it's really unsafe for the next occupant. So someone came up with this, which is a smart lock, which you give the code to your new tenant and they can get into the property safely, and then it could be reset for the next person. This business would not have existed were it not for Airbnb. So if you can look at the big platforms, the big tech companies are already doing something and already have an established market, you think about what problem has that caused? And that's an opportunity for a smaller player to get in. So there's a technique that I love, which I find very powerful, which reveals the unmet needs, because often, you know, people don't know what they need until you tell them. And it's this question, wouldn't it be great if? So how this works is if you imagine that you're your own client, right, the own user of your product, and even though you've already got your product, it's worth then asking, wouldn't it be great if in the shoes of the person who would be using it? Because they might come up with ideas and suggestions that you've never thought of and that you currently don't offer. So it's not about what you currently offer, it's about what do they actually need. So if you even said to your users of whatever product you've got, you said, if you could wave a magic wand over this product that you're using from me, and money was not an issue, time, starving, you know, you could have whatever you like, you could just wave pixie dust over it. Answer the following questions, like, wouldn't it be great if? And they'll tell you, oh, wouldn't it be great if it like came in black, or it came in red, or it came with, you know, an extra thing, or it came with this. So they'll tell you things that you would not have ever thought about. So that's where you start to get some good innovation ideas coming. So I'll just play a quick quiz. I won't invite participation because the microphones are turned off. But, you know, would it be great if we could take a photo, see it for 10 seconds and delete it? Right. And who would have thought that would be a product? And of course, it's Snapchat. And this is actually how it happened. These two guys were sitting around, didn't want their photos to be shared. And they said, wouldn't it be great if we could just take it, send it, delete it? And of course, Snapchat was the beginning. Would it be great if I could raise money directly for someone close to me? And then this company came along. And the heritage of that idea was, normally in Australia anyway, when you donate to a charity, you donate and it goes to the big pot, right? And you don't quite know where it's going. You don't know who it's helping. Is it going to admin, to the sick children? We don't know. It just goes into the big pot. Well, GoFundMe said, I can raise money and that money goes directly to the person you want it to go to. that's a big deal. That's a big deal and a big game changer. So if you're the Cancer Council in Australia or Greenpeace or Save the Children, whoever, this is a big threat to you because they're not going to donate their money anymore to those big charities. They're going to go, I'm going here because I want it to go to that child, that woman, that man. And so, you've got to be on top of things like this because that you could be the person being threatened. Wouldn't it be great if I could find local, trusted, cost-effective tradies to help me with odd jobs around the house? And I don't know if that's in your country, but it's certainly here. It was an Australian company. And so these two guys just got together and thought, it's so hard to find a tradie. You've got to ring them up. They've got to come and give a quote, and then they can't do it. And then it's too expensive. They don't turn up, all that kind of stuff. So they put it on a platform and all the tradies bid for it. But not just tradies, anyone can bid. Like if you can lay carpet, you can put yourself on the platform. If you can clean a house, if you want to build a website, so anything can get done. And it became a very, very powerful platform. Wouldn't it be great if we could read exactly what processes Australia's top disruptors use to build their online businesses? Well, that's why I wrote my books. It literally was, I wrote that because I said, wouldn't it be great if we could understand how other people have built their online businesses? And these books have been on sale for 7 years and they're still available in Officeworks and everywhere else. And it blows my mind that people still contact me going, I just read your book and now I'm doing this. And in fact, I am here because of these books, because Peter Williams bought my books. He read them. He didn't know me. And he made contact afterwards and he said, Bernadette, I've read your books. I'd really love to get in touch with you and see if you'd like to lecture and help me with entrepreneurial training. So here I am, right? Because of these books. So you never know where life leads you. They know their point of difference. Okay, again, a classic marketing situation where you've got to have a point of difference or else people don't know why they should pick you. And it's kind of easier, it's harder than it looks, right, to be different, but you've got to find something that is different. Take Fiverr, who I pretty much assume you'll know, and they came along and their massive point of difference was everything was cheap, and not just cheap, but $5. And I mean, I remember this. I remember somebody emailed it to me or they texted me and said, look, check this out. You can get like a website built for $5. I'm like, what? So what I remember about this was it was shareable. Like if you got something that people are sharing, you're onto something. And another one that I remember, which was Scoopon or Groupon, that's probably the more global one. And my sister-in-law, who's a big bargain hunter, she texted me and she said, you can get an afternoon tea worth $70 for $10. How amazing. I'm like, that sounds amazing. Is it real? Yes, it is. So then I sent it to my friends going, what a good deal. So suddenly you've got this word of mouth amplifying what you're doing. And that's how all these big tech companies have actually succeeded, is because they had their audience going, this is great. I want to share it with my network. I mean, you think of Dropbox, right? It doesn't work if you haven't got another person. So Dropbox gave, their database an extra gig of storage in the early days. And that was sufficient for them to go, I love this. I want to keep using it. I'm going to share it with others. And their database exploded because of that amazing free offer. This is an Australian company, Thank You Water, and Daniel Flynn, who runs it, a very big social entrepreneur, big-hearted man, just wanted to make sure that wells were being built in developing nations so that people could have safe water. So a portion of the revenue goes to building wells in those countries. And he was up against Coke, right? Mount Franklin. I mean, who does that? This is just a regular guy. He was about 22 years old and he saw what he saw. He was really affected by, what he saw in terms of lack of access to clean water. He said, I want to do something about that. And he literally got back to Australia, typed into Google how to build a water business, and he found a factory, he found his bottles, he did the marketing, and now he's got Thank You products left, right, and center. So he didn't change a thing, right? Water's water in that respect. The bottle's the same, everything's the same. But what's different is when you buy the bottle, you know that a portion of it is going to build wells and it's going to save people's lives. And so when you're at the 7-Eleven choosing your bottle of water, if you got the choice between Mount Franklin, Coke, Coke owns Mount Franklin, or you got the choice between Thank You, and it's exactly the same price, and yet you know this one's going to make a difference, it's a no-brainer. You go, why wouldn't I pick that? And so that's how he got started, and all power to him. He literally went up against Coke. If you've ever tried to get space in a fridge in a 7-Eleven or a supermarket where Coke own the fridge and are legally entitled to give whoever they want space, then you know how difficult that challenge was for him, but he did it. Things like clothing, the provenance of clothing, how it's made, the slave trafficking, the slave business in terms of making people safe and making sure the people who make the products are safe. That's obviously a big deal. And in the past, we didn't really mind. We just didn't care so much. We didn't take notice of where things were made. Now we do. And so now people are looking at tags, clothing tags, looking at what's the history of this particular garment. Has it been made with fair trade? Have people been paid fairly? Has it been made sustainably? All that kind of stuff. And so Everlane is a platform for clothing, and you can see different manufacturers of clothing, and you can pick your clothing based on how it's been made. And all the brands on Everlane are sustainable and safe and fair trade. So if you want to buy your clothing with a conscience, this is the place to go. So they don't actually make clothing, right? But they just enable people to buy clothing in a safe, from a perspective of the workers have been safe and well paid. Dollar Shave Club, if you haven't already looked at the crowdfunding video for Dollar Shave Club, you should look it up after this event. It is absolutely hilarious. It was 3 minutes, if that, and it was basically designed to get people to subscribe to the Dollar Shave Club, because their perspective was, you're buying your Gillette razor blades, really expensive, they're disposable mostly, and it's just costing you a fortune. And as men and women, but as men, you really need monthly subscriptions, right? Because you just run out of blades. And they said, we'll send you a box of blades every month. So you don't have to go to the shops. You don't have to pay full price. You just get amazing blades delivered to your door for a very affordable price. And because of this video, which again was shared by everybody because it was so funny and so quirky and weird, they just went through the roof, right? So quickly. In fact, they were bought by Unilever a couple of years ago for a cool $1 billion. And it literally started 10 years ago with a video. Okay, so these are things, right? If you get good at video, you get good shareability, things can go crazy for you. Create an MVP, that minimum viable product. Okay, so now we're moving more into the action side. Because one thing I've learned also over the years is you can have the best ideas and great intentions and great contacts and all those kinds of things. But if you don't actually do something with the idea, you don't execute, it remains just that, an idea. And the people who do really well, they don't wait for perfection. They don't wait for everything to be in a row to actually make a difference. They just start. And that's not to say you start wildly, you plan it out, you think about it, you do your research, but at some point you've got to do something. You've got to go out there and tell people what you're doing. And in fact, Reid Hoffman is famous for saying this particular phrase, but you may have heard me say, if you're not embarrassed by the first version of your product, you've launched too late. And it's so true. I mean, I teach lots of students on how to build their freelance copywriting businesses. And I coach them and I say, you've got to get your website up. And they say, oh, it's not ready yet. Okay, you've got to get your business card. Oh, not ready yet. Well, you got to get your one-page flyer. Oh, I'm not ready yet. I don't know who I'm going to target. I haven't got my, email sorted out. I haven't got my Australian business number. It's like, just start. Get a business card, $20, copywriter, phone number, and go. Just get out there and start talking about it. And I've become known for like this one idea about get your business cards done, but it is such a cheap way of actually committing your idea to paper in a tangible, real world sense. And just when you're out talking, this is my students, and people ask you what you do, you say, I'm a copywriter, and they'll say, what's that? You say, I help small businesses write their brochures and their websites and their blogs so that they can make more money and get on page 1 of Google. Oh, have you got a card? Oh, no, I don't. What a waste, right? But just by having your small business card, you give it over. Now you've got the exchange. So a business card is an MVP. So what is it really? Okay. If you were selling donuts, the temptation, if you are a perfectionist, and a lot of people hide behind perfectionism as a reason for not doing things, they go, yeah, I want to have this amazing donut, and it's going to have jam in the middle, and it's going to have chocolate icing, and it's going to have hundreds and thousands, and it's going to have a donut on top of that, and blah, blah, blah. It's like, yeah, that's for the future. But what do we need to go to market now? What is the minimum feature you can have in a product that makes it useful, that enables you to go to market? And that's probably, on this occasion, the cinnamon donut. So yeah, you can have your sprinkles and your chocolate and your custard, but later. Let's just get the donut to market, even just to see if it works. Because most people sort of hang on to the fancy donut thinking it will be brilliant when it's ready, and it's never ready. So you never get the chance to work out if the market actually needed it in the first place. So some ideas on how these big companies actually got started, I find incredibly inspiring, because you realize they all started somewhere. We now know them to be these big monoliths, but they all started with just somebody doing something. For example, Uber in Australia, the man who started, his name's Peter, and he needed taxi drivers on board. Okay, he needed taxi drivers to just trial the app, because they were the drivers of the app. And so he went to Melbourne Airport, and he took a flyer, like just a tiny little flyer. Drivers wanted make extra income, and he slipped it under the windscreen wipers of the cabs that were just waiting there. And he talked to them as well, and a few of them got on board. And then a few more, because they talked about it to their friends. They go, I just made, $50 tonight, just sitting around doing nothing when I wasn't driving. And so that's how Uber began in Australia, was literally just getting taxi drivers invested with a flyer. Catch of the Day is like a bargain website. It was a deal of the day. That was the book I ghost wrote for Gabby Leibovich. So they started off as selling secondhand goods and sort of good products, but basically, they were old or they were discontinued. And they'd go to markets in Australia, in Victoria, and just set up little stalls and sell clothing and bags and handbags and what have you, and shoes. And then they thought, why don't we, then somebody said to them, I've got all these suitcases, right? I think it was Antler, and we can't get rid of them. We're moving our stock. We're just discontinuing. Would you get rid of them for us? And so they said, yeah. So they took them on, and they were able to offer them for like a third or half price. And suddenly they had this website, and they think, let's just do this one deal today, which is just suitcases. And of course, the market went nuts, because they were thinking, this is Antler, brilliant brand, top quality products, not damaged, brand new, for half price, even a third of the price. It was just extraordinary. And they went nuts. And then they went to get another supplier. They said, what about, computers? Could we do that with Toshiba? So Toshiba gave them all these computers that were discontinued, and that sold out like $1 million worth in a day. And they were like blowing their brains going, oh my God, if we can just find product that's being discontinued or no longer needed, or they've overbought or whatever, we can get rid of it, because we've got this audience who are super engaged. So they had this deal of the day concept. And then again, that was something I shared when I got that. And I thought, I can buy a computer for half price. Why wouldn't I share it with my friends? And so they, amplified because of the shareable factor. So the point I'm making is Catch of the Day started with a little market stall just selling handbags. Canva, the design platform where you can design a flyer for nothing, amazing graphic design tools. Melanie Perkins, who began that with her partner and another man, she was a graphic designer, and she was doing school reports and school annual reports and school books. And she was really frustrated that she was trying to teach her clients to make their own kind of graphic design. And there were so many steps involved. You needed to use Photoshop and Illustrator and, Publisher and all these complicated programs. And she thought, wouldn't it be great if I could just enable people to make really high quality flyers in just a few clicks? So that's how Canva was born. And Booktopia, the book thing I just mentioned, they started out as SEO consultants, actually going into companies and helping them get on page 1 of Google. And one of their clients was a bookshop. And they decided, after they helped this bookshop get to the top of Google, to actually buy the bookshop. And it went from there. So MVPs, what do they look like? Well, you could do a small video. It could be a crowdfunding video. It could be a YouTube video. It could be a TikTok video. Just something of you speaking, saying, my product is this, and this is who I serve, and this is how I help. Something you can share. Because when you talk to people and they are interested, inevitably, they will say, have you got something you can send me, right? And you need to have something you can send. A flyer, a simple flyer, just like you saw earlier with Canva and Uber, just a one-pager describing what you do. It could be an app that sort of summarizes what you do. It could be a web page, just a simple web page that summarizes what you do, has some examples. A prototype, if it's actually a physical product, you can actually make it. It could be a slide deck, which is, the go-to mechanism for investors who want to know what you're doing. It could be an ebook that summarizes your thinking, your point of difference, your ethos, your methodology, or a landing page, which of course is just a small website. And lastly, take action. Okay, so all of that's great, but until something happens, nothing happens. Execution. So I would suggest you ask better questions. Okay, so when I was interviewing all those people I mentioned at the very beginning, I took my camera crew and I wanted to create a TV talk show about entrepreneurship. And I had to get a pilot together, right? So I got my pilot together, but I had to get distribution. And I didn't know how to get a TV talk show up and running. I'd never done it before. And I kept on running into brick walls. And then I thought, I've got to change the way I ask questions of myself. So instead of saying, how am I going to get funding for this pilot TV show? How am I going to get someone to distribute it? How am I going to get these amazing entrepreneurs to come on my show when I don't even have a distribution deal? And I thought, these how questions are not powerful. And the reason they're not powerful is because if I knew the answer, I wouldn't be asking how. So I decided to take those questions and convert them into the 5 W's. So the what, the when, the where, the why. The what, where, why, when, and who. Okay, get rid of the how. They're okay to start with because we always ask how questions. But the minute you hear yourself ask a how question, instantly convert it into one of these. So for example, with my TV show, it was like, well, who's already doing this that I could maybe model? What platform could I get this distributed on? When could I have this TV show up and running? Where can I film it? So I started to ask these W questions and it gave me a list of things to do. And suddenly things broke open because I was able to action those. They were verbs. And that's how the TV show came to life. I got distribution on Fairfax, which is the owner of The Age and Sydney Morning Herald. That led to the book and so on. That's why I'm here today. The second component, it's really important if you're going to do an online business, is you've got to have someone who's technically savvy. Now, I'm not, right? So anytime I do something techie, I have to bring a programmer or coder or software developer into the mix. And so I'm basically the hacker and I'm basically the hustler and my tech person is the hacker. So even if you only have these 2 people involved in your business in the early days, you can get things done. But if you have an online business, a piece of software, and you have no technical knowledge of coding or building of websites or building of apps, you will not succeed. So you've got to find somebody and you go to maybe the university and get students who are doing software development or coding or programming and see if they want to, get some work experience. But you need the tech support. If you don't have that, you can't do it as on your own as a marketer. So I'm more of a hustler. I'm marketing. I'm a speaker. I'm a writer. I'm a chatter. I'm fine with people. I can pitch. That's my sweet spot. But if I'm going to do anything, I need to bring the hacker involved as well. So they're the two people you need at the beginning of a startup. So to wrap this all up, the questions you might be asking is, well, what minimum viable product could you get up? What's the smallest thing that you could actually create that would help people see what you're trying to do? What W questions could you ask to get your project underway? Maybe come up with wouldn't it be great if, as a way to innovate, to find out new features that you might need to add to your product, or even to come up with a brand new idea from scratch. And if you can, avoid how-to questions or how, because they will lead you into the wall and you'll not proceed. So in wrapping up, if you like a sample chapter of my books, you're most welcome to get in touch. I know that the exchange rate between Australia and Africa is really bad. So $30 for a book is a lot of money. But if you'd like a sample book, I'm very happy to share that, a sample book chapter. I'm happy to share that with you. So there's a few of my contact points, and you're welcome to get in touch at any time. So Yangama, I think I've just gone 6 minutes over.
Thank you very much. So that was really amazing. To hear. I don't know if you don't mind, we can just allow a couple of questions.
Sure.
To ask, and I'm acknowledging another NEST leader from Africa who is here, Madam Teresa, and I've acknowledged Madam Kio, who is also here. They are influential leaders of the East Central and Southern African College of Nursing, which covers 16 countries in Southern Africa.
Wow.
So yes, yeah. So I'm quite that was amazing when you talked about adverts, awards, entering into awards. So that's something that we tend to think that you will be tapped on the shoulder that you have won something, but you really need to put yourself out there and tell your story and get advertised. That was really good. I think the other thing that I've noted, which is more of a comment from me, is that you just have to start straight away. Yeah. Don't wait until you have a finished product. And I kind of have that problem too, that I need to make it. I'm fear the embarrassment that, if people have negative comments about my product, and I think it's overcoming that fear and just testing it out on the market rather than spending. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Just keep talking about it.
Keep talking. I will let people who have good questions speak. We've ended up with about 35 people online, so which is amazing. Anyone with questions to ask, we'll give Bernadette some questions. So do we have any questions? I'm just scanning through the screens to see if there's anybody with a question.
If anybody wants those sample chapters, just email me at that address, support@copyschool, and I'll get it to you.
So if you do not mind, I can share it with the video. The same.
Sure.
Yes. So if send, I'll send you an email afterwards. So we have got some comments that are online. The presentation was nice. I've learned how to build an online business. And Anton, here's a question. So Anton, you can unmute yourself and please go ahead.
Okay. Good afternoon. Thanks for the session. I'm inquiring about the minimum viable product. I just get talking, just keep talking, talk to your potential customers, talk to people, let them get interested in what you're trying to offer. But for some startups, it's really hard to talk about something that you don't have physically, that a customer can try out with. And then they're also expensive to have. Like, you can't just wake up in the morning and you have this minimum viable product, and yet you can't talk to your customer without it. So in such a case, what would you recommend or advise us to do? Because it is expensive to come up with an MVP. At the same time, I can't just come into your office and begin talking to you about something that is non-existent.
I think that's where a flyer comes in handy, or a PowerPoint deck. Like I've been in a lot of startup accelerators, and most people don't have a product to begin with. You know, it's a concept, it's an idea, and they're looking for funding, they're looking for money to get going. And all we've done is present an idea. And if it's not on a slide deck, it's on a flyer. So it's unavoidable, right? No one's expecting you to instantly come up with an app or a website or a piece of code without, you know, getting some feedback from customers to see if it's relevant or not. At some point, you need to invest, okay? Eventually, if someone's serious about buying it or investing in you, they will want to see this in action. But just to even test the idea, you know, to say, is this something you could use? Is this something you think would be valuable? If so, how much would you pay for it? Who would use it? You know, what would you like to see happen with this? So you've got to just treat it as though it's sort of stage one, which is ideation or crowdsourcing of ideas, because, you know, it's difficult to bring something to life that's expensive, but you do have to just start talking about it. And that would be, like I said, the flyer. It could be a video, could be a PowerPoint deck, even just screenshots of what the app could be. So even though it's not a technically, you know, connected app, it could be just the screen 1, screen 2, screen 3, screen 4. This is how people move through it. This is what it does. So you don't have to actually go and build it.
I'll also add that there, like in Africa, there are companies like Johnson & Johnson, which are scanning ideas from nurses and healthcare providers, other healthcare providers who have got ideas that are sustainable to solve the challenges in Africa. So I'm pretty sure that it's not only Johnson & Johnson. There might be a variety of companies where you can take your ideas, as Bernadette said, just develop the concept, develop the idea, write it well, your slide deck or your flyer, and be able to present it in front of people. And there are also people who are willingly to invest in those ideas. And part of Vaka Health Foundation's mission is actually to do that you develop good ideas, and if they're investable, we'll help you out to seek funding for that.
Yeah, so true. In Australia, I don't know if you have this in Africa, but pitch nights where you go along and you get 3 minutes and you get up and you say, here's my pitch. This is the problem I solve. This is a target audience I'm in front of. This is the business model behind it. And this is what I'm seeking. And there might be 20 people, 30 people, 100 people. And who knows, there could be someone there who needs it, or who can partner with you, or who can invest in you as well. So they're standard in Australia and America. And there's also accelerators that you can be a part of, that you can do online, things like Y Combinator. There's one in Australia called Startup Bootcamp. And they, in fact, I think there's even a health startup accelerator within Startup Bootcamp. So you can just Google them, and they have programs that you can apply to be on. They're free. Well, yes, they're free, most of them. And you get funding in return, like $25,000, and they take 10, 15% of your business. But it's like, well, you got to give away something, right, to get started. And they give you all the support because they want to see you succeed. And similar to Johnson & Johnson, I don't quite know what they do, but you have to remember big companies are out there who don't have the agility, they don't have the resources, they don't have the time or the energy or the staff to come up with these ideas that you might have. They're busy building multi-billion-dollar businesses, but these little things that you might be coming up with could solve a real problem for those big companies. And so they're on the lookout to think, that's what we've been looking for. That's a protection for us. It gives us, a competitive advantage. So they're always on the lookout to buy and invest in smaller companies because it saves them having to build it in-house. So just know that people are looking for what you might have, and you have power in that as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Any more questions? So I'll just scan through the two screens to see. Okay. I don't think I've got, so it means that your presentation was excellent and
Okay, great.
people understood. I'm sure that some questions will follow up, will come over and we'll be able to share with you if you don't mind.
No problem.
Can you all please just help me to thank Bernadette for attending? We can use the reaction sign for clapping there. So can you all please? We really appreciate your presentation, and hopefully in future we'll be able to share some of the businesses that have come.
I would
from,
love to hear that.
yeah, absolutely. So we have had about 40 business ideas presented. So we're working through to find the ones
awesome.
that are at a stage of sustainable or investable, and we'll be able to share them with you in the future. And hopefully we'll be able to invite you to Africa as well.
I would
That'll be
love
amazing.
that.
That'll
That would be amazing. All right, well, I'll say good night. Goodbye. Good morning. Have a great day.
Thank
See
you very much.
Thank you,
Okay, have a
Ngamba.
great day. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody. That was amazing. And I'll share the video, which I've recorded, and we'll share with everybody. Thanks. We'll call it a day for today. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you
Bye
very much.
bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Have a great night, everybody. Oh, it's daytime, isn't
No,
it?
it's morning. It's morning in Malawi. It's morning.
Thank you. Thank you, Wezi. Actually, Wezi, I can just tell you that Malawi has approved the fellowships. So first country
No.
to approve the fellowships. So all roads lead to Malawi at the moment. So which is
Okay.
which is great.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah, Botswana on the way. Botswana on the way.
Ah, fantastic. Fantastic.
Yeah, thank you, Malawi, for taking the lead. I'm happy as the chair of education. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, yeah, love our Botswanian brothers to be on board. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. You have a great day, everybody. I'm gonna disappear from online and stop the recording.